would like to ask you a question. Do you read the lease 60 page for the new tenant, or you don't read the lease? You just give the lease to the new tenant, to the buyer, or do we have to read all the lease? I mean,
So I personally don't get involved in lease assignments or new leases for a buyer unless I'm going to be getting paid on the lease. And on a lease assignment, look at it from the landlord's perspective. They already paid a leasing agent to, to get them that 5-year lease or whatever. And so if I'm coming in and asking for it, or if I have if my seller is coming in and saying, hey, I know there's only a 1.5 years left on my lease, and I want to assign it to this buyer, and then the buyer needs, another 5, 6, 7, probably 8 years or so if they're getting an SBA loan. But the landlord typically is not going to necessarily want to pay additional leasing fees on that. And so I just have always looked at it. I will work with a buyer and basically kind of coach them on what they need to do to put together in terms of a package for the landlord. But after that, I stay, my practice has always been to stay out of it. And I let the buyer, usually the seller has a pretty good relationship with either the property manager or the landlord directly. And so I'll have the buyer put together the package and work with the seller to get it to the proper people, either the property manager or the landlord, make sure they have everything they need. But negotiating, if the buyer wants a new lease and they're negotiating a new lease, unless I'm going to be paid on that new lease, I don't want the liability. So liability in my, the way I look at everything is if I'm going to incur liability, I need to have compensation for it. And otherwise, I don't want the liability.
So we don't need to read the new lease, even with the new lease. No, we
don't have to. I mean, I might scan through it and just see if there's anything that I think is problematic. It really depends on the buyer, and it depends on if I'm representing the buyer or not. And most of the time I'm not. Most of the time I'm just representing the seller, and the buyer is self-represented.
No, because I'm a dual agent and the buyer asked me to read the lease. That's why I asked you.
Well, if you're a dual agent, and then the buyer is your client also. And so if the buyer is your client's asking you to read the lease, then, you've got two choices. You can either read the lease, or you can say, I think you'd be better off having your attorney review this and have them get it. A lease is a legal document. They want a legal opinion. You can't give them a legal opinion, right? So you can just say, hey, as a broker, I can't give you a legal opinion on this. I really think your attorney should review this for you so they can give you a legal opinion on anything that you may want to change in the lease or how you want to counter the lease.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Diane, sometimes I'll go into the leasing file in SkySlope and send one of the form leases to my client and say, hey, this is the form we have at eXp Commercial. Give it to your lawyer. And if they want to fill it out and use it or amend it, great. If they don't want to use it, that's fine too. But yeah, I like to just even try to turn our forms over to their lawyer if, like Tanya says, if you're dealing with a good client, their lawyer's involved. And but sometimes the lawyers appreciate it that you send our form leases over, but I'm dealing with one right now where it's kind of like they need a new lease. Their lease is about to expire, but our form is like 17 pages.
Yeah.
So it looks a little intimidating. So they might not want to use it, but that's as far as I go. Just like, give my form to your lawyer, or I'll send it like to them and their lawyer if we have some group chat going on or whatever.
Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if the landlord has already provided, or the property management company has already provided the buyer with a new lease for their
Yeah.
review, which sounds like that's what's going on with you, Diane, right? They
Yes.
already provided the buyer with a new lease,
Yes.
and
Yes.
now the buyer is coming to you and saying, hey, I want you to review this for me.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where I think,
Yes.
your easiest out, if you don't want to do it,
Yeah.
is,
Oh,
and
yes.
actually, it's not even just an easy out. It really is just a matter of if they're going to be negotiating a lease,
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
you kind of probably do want their attorney to handle that.
Yes. Thank you so.
So unless that's your expertise.
No, I'm not.
So yeah. And I mean, I do that. So I'll negotiate leases and commercial leases and things like that, typically from my law practice. I mean, I have people come to me and they want me to look at the leases and negotiate things for them and all that. And I'll do that from my law practice. I don't usually do that as a broker. And,
Oh,
from broker standpoint, I've always stayed focused on the business side of things. So
yes.
now that may change a little bit, but I don't know.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Thank you. Yeah.
So what else do we have out there? Hey, John.
Hey, the only thing I would add to the landlord tenant situation is that in my experience and all the deals that I've done, not a ton, I haven't done a ton of deals, but all the deals that I've been engaged in,
Yeah.
I was never able to secure a commission from the landlord on a lease that was being co-signed or taken over if there's any term left.
Assignment. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the event of an assignment, I mean, you can ask for it. In my situations, I've just not been successful to, because at the end of the day, the landlord's going to say no. And you pointed out that, he's already paid the commission on the
Yeah.
original lease. Why am I going to pay twice?
Exactly.
So yeah. But yeah, just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a possibility if there's no extensions left that you might be able to get a leasing fee on the extensions that you're negotiating. If you have, let's say there's a year or 2 years left on the lease, and then there's no further extensions. So, it's possible to get an assignment of those 2 years and then negotiate options for extension and another 5 years or something like that. Or you can get an assignment and amendment, but that gets dicey because let's say you get an assignment and amendment that takes your 2 years that are remaining and bumps that up to 5 years. Now your seller is going to be on the hook because your seller has a personal guarantee.
Yes.
Yes.
So your
Yes.
seller's going to end where your seller is on the hook for the last 2 years of that lease,
Yeah.
even after it's assigned typically, because most landlords will not drop that personal guarantee.
Mm.
If you do an assignment and amendment, now the seller's personal guarantee goes for another 5 years, not just another 2 years. And most sellers are not willing to do that. So trying to get, it's either an assignment or a new lease. And if you can get a new lease, then again, maybe you can negotiate a fee on it. But anything you do to try and get a fee on that, the landlord is typically going to want to offset somewhat because they've already paid for at least that last 2-year period. And then again, it's, your seller may want to be released from their personal guarantee, and the landlord may come back and say, well, I would release them, but since I'm having to pay you, the landlord will use that against you. So I just always looked at it as, my fee comes from selling the business, and I'm happy to do that. And you know, that's the fee that I'm interested in, is the one that I get from selling the business. And I want to make sure there's nothing that ends up negating that. And I don't want to incur any additional liability on top of the business sale.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah. Anyhow.
That's just the option. You can ask the landlord, but if you don't want, you don't ask, right?
Well, you need to get options. So if you look at the way that most options are written, they say that they're personal to the tenant or to the lessee. And so if they're personal to the lessee, that means that even if you assign, if you get the lease assigned, those options don't get assigned with it.
Oh.
Unless they're expressly, you know, there's got to be express language that indicates that those options are also assigned, or you just get new options for the tenant, options to extend. But yeah, almost all of those options say that they're personal to the lessee or
Yes.
the current tenant. So
Yes, thank you.
yeah, you gotta watch out for that.
Yes, thank you, Tanya.
And the other thing that happens with leases, and you know, you'll get this, somebody will come to you and say, hey, I've got this great under market lease, and I've got 20, you know, it was a 20-year lease, and I've got 8 years left on it, and it's way under market, and so that has extra value. I want you to increase the value of my business because this lease is under market by $3,000 a month, so that's $36,000 extra, right? That, well, yeah, but the problem is when you go to get that lease assigned, you're going to find that the landlord is going to bring it up to market rent, so they're going to do an assignment amendment, because every lease assignment, you know, most leases say you cannot assign the lease without consent of the landlord, which will not be unreasonably withheld. Well, it is not unreasonable for them to amend the lease at the same time it's being assigned in order to bring it up to market rent. So when somebody tries to convince you that there's extra value in a business because they have an under market lease, yeah, that doesn't add value. It just doesn't. It's a nice pipe dream, but it just doesn't, because the landlord is not going to allow an assignment without bringing that back up to market.
Oh, I got it.
So,
thank you.
John, I'm sure you've seen that one before too, huh?
Yeah, no, absolutely true. I think from the perspective of the landlord, they pretty much hold the key to the incoming tenant and the buyer, right? So I think from their perspective is, look, they want to secure a good tenant, a good business owner, and they're going to do everything they can to, you know, raise their rents when they can. So absolutely, I think it's always, you're at the mercy of the landlord.
Yeah.
I think we know that, you know, we've had some deals where they don't go through because of the fact that the landlord is not willing to cooperate, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a situation where the landlord was looking at this this buyer slash tenant coming in with no experience, and their position was, look, I like you as an individual. I don't have a problem with you, but you don't have a track history of doing business. So guess what? The deposit needs to be increased to 6 months.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that becomes a sticking points for the buyer that's coming in, because they're thinking, you know, their capital is already sort of like, you know, focused on maybe some renovation, some new equipment, but they didn't think about the 6 months worth
lease.
of capital that's required to secure that lease.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, yeah, it becomes pretty sticky, and you're at the mercy of the landlord.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that happen too. And that was one of the ways that we got around the landlord issue, or got the lease assigned, was that the buyer was willing to come up with 6 months security deposit.
Wow.
And well, but what we did is we said, okay, so after the first year, after the first 11 months, or the first 11 months, then 1 month gets applied to month 12. you know, or after the first 12 months, 1 month gets applied to month 13. It was a 5-year lease. And so basically every year, one month of that security deposit was going to be applied until they got back down to this particular landlord always required 2 months security. So once it got to 2 months, it would just stay. But otherwise, every year after every 12 months period, you know, there was 1 month that would be applied. 1 month of that security deposit would be applied to the rent.
Oh.
And so, you know, there are ways to work things out when you have a reasonable landlord, because they're wanting to protect their interests. Now, sometimes you have situations where a landlord wants to just has a different vision for whatever center it is that that the business is in, and they don't want the business there anymore. They just decide that for whatever reason, I've got that going on right now, where we have the best buyer in the world, total great fit and all that. There's only a little bit less than 3 years left on the lease, and in order for the business sale to go through, the buyer obviously needs 10 years. And the landlord's saying, no, we're not going to give you any extensions. So we can't, you know, now it's like, okay, well, if we look at relocating the business, I mean, the seller can't relocate the business because there's still 2.5, 3 years left on the lease. It was like, well, will you, if we find another location, will you allow us to relocate and do an early termination? No, we're not going to do that.
Oh.
And it's like, okay, so basically the landlord's just saying, nope, you know, you're going to ride out your time here, and then we're closing, and then you're going to have to close your business down because
Oh.
we're not going to give you any time. We're not going to give you an extension. We're not going to give you anything. And meanwhile, the business, you know, they pay their rent on time every month. And it's not inexpensive rent. But this particular property manager, or not even the property manager, it's a leasing agent, doesn't like the type of business it is, and has a different vision for the center that it's in. So like, okay. So we're trying to figure out what to do now. You know, what's the next step on
It's
that?
a tough question, tough answer.
Type of
Yeah,
business
so
is
the
it?
buyer, you know, buyer wants the business still, but can't, I mean, definitely not at the price, not at the value that it was, because of the risk. I mean, so the risk is substantially increased, right?
Yes.
Because now you've got 2.5, 3 years, then you've got to relocate the business, do a brand new build out, which is expensive.
Yes.
You know, you got to find a location to even do the build out, but you can't even start looking for a location until probably the
When we
last
out.
6 to 8 months,
Yeah.
or six to 12 months. And that's it, you know, because otherwise, I mean,
It's
you
tough.
can't get out of your lease.
What type of business is it, Tanya? I'm just curious.
Interestingly enough, it's a fitness studio.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a
Interesting.
fitness studio.
Wow.
And it's just it's interesting that the landlord has taken, or that, yeah, the leasing agent has taken the position that they've taken.
Oh my God.
So
I would say maybe like if they just eventually they're gonna have to you know, like you said, relocate. Maybe
Yep.
maybe they should look into more of a mixed use type of projects, because they may be open to fitness studios.
yeah,
Just
could
something
be.
to think about.
Could be. Yeah, it's real interesting. It's so we're still trying to find a way around this leasing agent, but not sure if we're going to be able to.
It's tough.
It is yeah. So yeah, but work in progress, right? I mean, we run into obstacles all the time. I can remember years ago having was a business. We had a buyer, we had an escrow going. It was a dog bakery, for God's sake. You know, it was a
Oh.
little retail dog bakery that was in a it was in the farmer's market down in LA, in the farmer's market, Fairfax district. And the landlords there, they don't provide leases. Everything's month to month.
Oh.
So we couldn't get it, you know, the buyer couldn't get the SBA loan. It was like, can we just get like a 2-year lease?
Yeah.
And the guy dilly-dallied around for, I don't know, probably 3 months. And then said, yeah, we'll give you a 2-year lease, but we want $50,000 in key money
Oh.
to give you a 2-year lease. So needless to say, that deal evaporated. Because I think the sales price on that thing was only about 200 grand anyways. I can't even remember, it was so long ago, but yeah. But it you know, lesson learned, what I learned was anytime after that somebody said their business was in the farmer's market, it was like, good luck with that. Because there's, you know, unless you have somebody coming in with a bag of cash, nobody can buy your business. And you know, even if they are coming in with a bag of cash, they're probably going to want to earn out, because on a month-to-month lease, you know, the landlord or the property manager can put a 30-day notice to get them out. So nobody's going to pay for a business where they can be evicted 30 days later.
I would like to